So what in the heck is a collagraph print? Well, first off, collagraph, the word collagraph derives from the Greek. Colla means to glue, kind of like collage. And we talked about collage earlier, I think. And graph is a Greek word for drawing. And we're going to do collagraph printing today. So we're going to glue our drawing onto cardboard or whatever your firm, well, you could call it a substrate, which means that it's underneath, or your firm paper that is just going to hold everything together. So you can't use this flippy, this lightweight copy paper. It's got to be something that's a little bigger or a little firmer, like cardboard. And we've used cardboard before. I remember I asked you to save your cardboard the last time we were together. So I hope you did that. We're going to use glue, of course. So you can also, we also talked about how cardboard can come from many different places. We've got cardboard that we're all getting deliveries from, but I've also got a Kleenex box that's actually kind of that perfect weight for our gluing. And you could use, I don't know, a cereal box. You can use anything that has kind of this lightweight cardboard or lightweight, heavy paper. So what is a collagraph? Well, a collagraph is something, as we said, a drawing that is glued onto something else. And then a printing is when we use our paints to kind of print whatever that drawing is. So you can do this so many different ways. I'm actually gonna, you know what, I'm gonna stop right here and I'm gonna talk to you about our supplies. So the basic supplies that you need are your substrate or your thing, whatever the paper is that you're gonna glue down on. You need glue, and Elmer's glue is best. We've got Mod Podge actually works for this. A glue that is liquid is probably better because you can get more on it than, say, a glue stick. A glue stick really isn't going to work very well for this. It'll work if you put enough down, and especially if you're using cardboard, it'll work. But if you're going to use some of the other things that I'm going to suggest, then you probably want to think about something that's got more liquid to it. So glue is essential. You're also going to want to have your scissors, of course, and we're going to think about the supplies that you're going to glue down. So let's look at some of my examples here, and you'll get an idea for supplies. So this one is obviously just cardboard here. And the cardboard we talked about how you can peel back that paper that sits on the top of the cardboard, and this is, you can see, something that's a little thinner because it was a lighter weight cardboard. And you can just sit, and actually it's kind of fun, you can just sit and peel back all this paper and reveal that texture behind, or those ridges behind. If I do it on this is one of those boxes that I received a shipment with. You can see this one. Oh, look at that, that peeled back really nice. And it's just got a really light coating of glue on it, so it'll come back. You can see the one that I used for this example was a little bigger. And that's kind of fun too, because you can put different sized ridges on here as well and kind of alternate if you want to. So cardboard works really well. If nothing else, cardboard is awesome. Here is an example of one that I used where I have some of the ridges and some of them just flat. And here's a beautiful flower that has used all the ridges here, and then I cut out each individual petal and glued it down. Now my black, this is a really heavy black paper, and you can use something like just a heavy paper wherever you find it. How about string? Here's a good one for string, and you can see that I'm making either a drawing with this or some sort of and it can be abstract, or and I'm essentially drawing with string here. This, I used a nice heavyweight string, or a twine even works. If you get into something that's really lightweight, that isn't going to work quite so well when you start doing your printing. Even like yarn isn't going to work quite so well because yarn is so soft, and you'll see what I mean when we start with our when I show you the printing side of it. We've also got, this is a variety of things that I found in the kitchen, and I have my string again, but guess what this is? These are spaghetti noodles, okay? And you don't have to use straight noodles. You can use any kind of noodle to do this too. They come in, you know, they've got the wagon wheel kind. I think if you have your mac and cheese, you could even, some of you maybe have dinosaur mac and cheese or whatever, save one of those little dinosaurs and put it on here. That would actually be kind of fun. I don't have things like that in my house. I just have the strings, but you could use any of those pastas. Beans work really well. What's this? What do you think? This is my rice that I use to add my texture in here. And I want to point out, here is part of that Kleenex box. And actually, this isn't going to work really well. And it's because it's so thin. And it would have been better for me to use something that was a little wider or thicker, right, to put down as my leaf, because when I go to do my printing, it's all going to be almost the same height. So, and you'll see what I mean later. I also found, this is like a fruit bag or onion bag. You know how our onions come in, or I think this was oranges, that I have this little bag, and that mesh works really well too. And these are little discs that I found from something that, like a game pieces that I bought for something else that I was doing. Again, I've got my string, and guess what these are? These, you can use anything, but what I used were a rubber band, and I cut pieces. This is a smaller one, but I cut little pieces or squares off that rubber band and glued them down too. So I've got a nice little drawing that I can do a printing of, and I think I'm going to use this as my example for printing. This is a hot glue gun. Okay, so you've got hot glue, and I've actually got mine heated up. And you have to be careful with these. I think it would be best for you to do it with an adult around, obviously. And you ask your parents whether or not they think this is a good idea for you. But it goes on, and it leaves those raised parts of my drawing. And I've got my, you can see I did my leaves this way, and I'm going to fill it in a little bit more. The idea here, obviously, is for us to have that raised image up off our paper. And the glue, even though it's liquid, hot glue is thick enough where it stays nice and raised. It's not going to flatten out too badly. So I'm going to set this aside for it to dry a little bit. And it's got those little air bubbles in it, but that's not going to matter at all. And this is one that I started with the printing, okay? And you can see where I've added my paint. So let's talk about paint. Paint, here is my secret for paint, okay? A lot of you are going to say, oh, I don't have paint at home, and we can try some watercolor if we want to. I'll see what watercolor does. I haven't used watercolor with this, but I would actually imagine that watercolor would work. But I have some paint here, and this is my big secret, is a lot of artists, you know, they spend all kinds of money on paint. You don't have to spend a lot of money to get acrylic paint. And acrylic paint is paint that has a little plastic in it, so it's thicker. Watercolor is the colors are held together with water. Acrylic paint, your colors are held together with plastic. So you can imagine, or acrylic, and you can imagine that they're kind of, they're a little thicker. Kind of like a tempera. And a tempera, though, is held together with chalk. And I don't have any of that at home as well, but I do have some of this acrylic. And my secret here is this paint I bought at Home Depot and at Lowe's. Either one works, and they actually do this, I think, in some of the other hardware stores. But these are samplers, and it's just regular inside paint. And I get the eggshell because the eggshell doesn't have a high sheen to it or a high shine to it. It's kind of a medium. But if you're going to be doing this, start out with just 3 colors: blue, yellow, and red. Okay, and if they don't have them, pick out of your out of their little color selection area. You can pick out a yellow that you like, and a red that you like, and a blue that you like. And of course, why am I suggesting these 3 colors? Well, you guys know the answer to that. It's because they're primary colors, and our primary colors make up all the other colors of the rainbow. So you can take these 3 colors and you can mix out whatever other colors that you think you want for this. And I would suggest actually a 4th, and it would be white. Okay, and all you need to do is the things that they mix for white, that's all I use, is I pick up one of their little mixer pots, and I have a really nice, bright, clean white, which is nice. So that's great. You can see I use all kinds of things in my art. I use this type of paint. I use nice, expensive paints sometimes, and a lot of times I'll layer things. I use inks and lots of different kinds of brands. All brands are a little different too. Some are a little shinier than others, you know. So I like to play with a lot of different brands, and so that's my hint on paint. And we'll talk about paint again when we start our printing. Now, I also have some bubble wrap here. That would be something that you could use too. That would be kind of fun if you wanted to use dots. And I didn't use that on any of mine, but we can think about that actually in just a minute. So, how to start. First thing you want to do is you can pause this right now and gather all of the things that you think might be fun to put together in your collagraph. And even gather more than what you think you might need. Look in your closets, look in your cupboards, look in your drawers where you keep all of your supplies for office supplies or whatever, your art supplies, and anything that you can glue down that will leave you a raised drawing. And after that, come back and join me, and we will put together our collagraph and do some painting. So, oh, and the other thing you're going to need too, and I forgot to tell you this, is you're going to need a sheet of some white paper to do your printing on too. So if you have paint. If you don't have paint, that's actually another thing I should tell you, is if you don't have paint, still get these things, and you can, if once you get paint, maybe you won't even want to, but you'll at least have a nice drawing that you've glued down and that you've kind of designed. Okay, so get all your supplies together, and meet me back here. Hit that pause button, and I'll see you in a few minutes. Okay, we're back. I hope you have all your supplies ready. You've got your glue, your scissors. Let's talk about how to make your base first. Maybe you've already cut it out. If you haven't, you may end up, if you have little hands and need to use little scissors, it may be a little tough to get this cut in a nice shape for you to make it work or get it cut. And you may want to ask mom or dad or an older brother or sister or what have you to help you get your square. And I like to use a square. Actually, you could use a circle. You could do whatever you wanted to do. Any shape is good. So I've got my cutting here. You can pull back now, and if you want to use your cardboard, take off and peel off any places where you might want to use this texture. Now, can you use this without peeling it back? Of course you can. I'm going to actually take and I'm just going to do some random shapes here, just for fun. And I'm going to do a circle. And gosh, we got so many options. So I'm just going to leave it at that. You guys, I'm sure you don't want to sit here and watch me work and build. I've shown you a lot of possibilities, so we can move on and let's just pretend that I've got this full of things. I personally like to add my glue on the thing that I'm gluing rather than on this, because then I know how much I need and how much I don't need. And I'm then going to press this down so it sticks. Now, if you've got this, here's a hint. If you've got all this glue that's sitting off to the side, that isn't a big deal. But if it's like really squishing out, here's a hint for you. I keep these little things right here, and I'm just going to take and I'm going to wipe that off with this little corner, and then I don't have it with my fingers. Otherwise, once I start using all this other stuff, I will have glue all over my fingers, and then it's going to stick on everything. And I do not want that, so I'm going to use my scissors here, cut a little bubble wrap. Now the exception to this, and of course I want to be bubble side up. Make sure this is glued down really nice. The exception to this is going to be with my string. It's going to be really hard, and it's going to be hard enough for me to glue my string down, but if I've got glue all over it and it's on my fingers, it's going to be a yucky mess. So I'm going to try to do a spiral with my string, and I'm going to very carefully do my spiral with my glue first. And I'm not going to cut my string, because if I cut my string, I'll end up with something that's probably too short. So I'm not going to cut my string, and I'm going to start from the outside and work my way in, so I'm not fighting with all that glue on the outside when I'm laying it down. I'm just going to really softly lay it down over the top of my glue, and I'm not trying to push it in or make sure that it sticks too much yet. And around and around I go. Oh, I have more string here. And look at that. And my fingers came up pretty clean because I wasn't fighting. Now I am going to fight with cutting this. I can see already. There we go. Alright. Look at that. Okay, so now that I've got my string laid down, I'm going to take, I've got my little handy dandy finger protector here, and I'm just going to use that to push everything down so it stays. Alright, that's great. Okay, same thing with this. I'm going to put this over here. And what else can I do? How about some rice? This would be some really interesting texture. And again, rice is one of those things where I am not going to try to, and I'm just going to rub this with the lid or with the tip. It's not something that I'm going to try to put my glue on first. Can you imagine? Little piece of rice and a little piece of glue. I'm not going to try to do that. I'm just going to drop it on my paper. Again, my handy dandy finger protector. I'm going to push down, and I didn't try to fill everything. You could. You could also use, how about beans? Beans would actually be really interesting too. Still kind of like that idea of the mac and cheese that has the different types of shapes of macaroni. That'd be kind of fun too. And oh, you know what? I'm going to make this, actually, I'm going to break it in half. I'm going to make this kind of look like a flower. That just struck me. I am going to put my glue down first again because these are kind of skinny, which I'm kind of making a liar out of myself about putting glue down onto my thing first. But these little skinny things, don't worry about it coming off the edge, and so on and so forth. So I can go on and on and on with this. Now I need to set this aside to dry because obviously if I put paint on this and I try to stick my paper over the top, it's going to turn into a terrible mess. So I'm not going to do that. What I am going to do though is I am going to bring this one with my string, and we're going to add a little bit of paint to this and see how this works out. So I'm going to use this paint I got at Lowe's, and a nice big brush. And I actually like to water my things first. It just helps it kind of settle a little bit, and it's easier for me to transfer it onto my paper because it'll be wet. And cardboard is also going to be okay with that too. So I'm going to very carefully paint this. And since it's wet, it's not going to dry because acrylic paint dries pretty quickly too. So we don't want it to dry. And come on. Gotta work fairly quickly, so I'm trying. Now you can see I've got paint underneath or behind my string, and I think that's going to be okay as long as I'm really careful. That's too much paint. As long as I'm really careful about my paper. Okay, so let's see what happens here. My paper, and just going to set it on top very lightly, and then I'm going to rub with the palm of my hand to try to transfer that image. Let's see what happens. Look at that. Okay, so that's a really simple transfer, right? How about, I'm going to use this, let's do this. I want to try some watercolor. And let's see, watercolor. I don't have my, but I have is my good stuff. And I didn't bring my other one or get my other one. Let's try this and see what happens. Okay, so my watercolor, and these I love. These are my beautiful watercolors. If you're really into watercoloring and painting and all of that, I highly recommend these watercolors. They are Japanese, and The brand is these Kuretake Gansai Tombis, and they are wonderful colors. You can see they go on really thick and bright. If you're looking for some watercolors to invest in for your own art, these are fantastic. Okay, so I am going to, what color do I want these? I'm going to do, and I think it's gonna be interesting to see whether or not this lays down or not. I'm not so sure about this. You can see that the plastic of the glue, hot glue, is not lending itself very well. It's pushing away my watercolors. So I'm just going to add, I don't think this is going to work at all. I'm just quickly going to do this because I can see already that it isn't going to work. Well, maybe not. Well, let's see what happens. All right, so I've got my paper very carefully. And not a lot, huh? What about with my acrylic? That'll be something that'll be interesting. I'm gonna take the worst of my paint, my water off my brush. And acrylic, look at that, it is sitting on top. Plastic on plastic is working. So if you have some house paint sitting around, this would be the thing to do. All right, let's see what happens now. Oh, I'm going to use the same paper. So it needs to be a thicker paint, doesn't it? Better. It's better. All right. And the last one I'm going to do is I'm just going to, I've already painted this, you can see, but let's add and I've got my brush is pretty wet. And I'm working quickly with my paints here. One last rub it with my palm. Oh, very nice. Look at that. Okay. I think cardboard is a really good way to go. I know some of you are going, no, don't stop now. You know what? Let's do this. This is close enough to dry. I'm going to do this one last because then you can see how the different textures are going to help. Oh, that's awesome. And that rice, can you see how that is going to be really cool too? And we've already done this, but I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to add a little bit of water to my dry rope. And if I had finished this, it would be even better because I'm going to have a blank space right here, but that's all right. We're going to see rice and we're going to see bubble wrap. Hopefully you have bubble wrap with all these things, shipments that we're getting at home. And one last piece of paper here. Rubbing it with the palms of my hands. Look at the rice there. and the bubble wrap. That's so awesome. And notice this is still had a little bit of texture in it because you can see the cardboard behind, right? If you want, I don't know that I would recommend it, but if you want, you can go back in and very carefully add to your paint if you want to. That's very cool. Okay, so that is how to make a collagraphic print. And I hope you have lots of interesting things around your house that you can glue down to make a beautiful arrangement. It can be something that's completely abstract and you're just having fun with texture and all of that. And next time we meet, we are going to be talking about Michelangelo, and we are going to draw and paint, hopefully, if you have some watercolors, in a completely different way than you've ever done before. And I can pretty much guarantee you have never done this before. And it's not going to be easy. Well, I shouldn't say that. It is going to be easy, but it's going to be a little uncomfortable because it is so different. So think about that and see if you have any guesses as to what we're going to do. And until then, I hope you have a grand day and you are staying happy and you are keeping yourselves occupied and hopefully reading lots of good books, playing games, all of that. So I look forward to next time. You guys take care.